Yes, Mayor, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Chris Creed with Foth. I am online, and my colleague Bill Hobensack is there in the room with you. And we're going to give you an update on the status of a pretty long list of initiatives that are ongoing with the beach program. And I am going to share my screen. Um, if I can, yep, here we go. Right here. Can everyone see my screen?
It's not
There,
right
there
there.
it
Yeah.
is. Yep.
Yep.
Got it. Okay. I'm not going to try to project it. I'm just going to use in the normal mode here. Um, so again, it's Chris Creed and Bill Hovensack with both. We're the still the Jacksonville firm that's been working with you guys for decades now, with our prior colleague Eric Olson, who is heading toward different things in his life besides daily activities at the office. And so Bill and I have picked up the baton with the village and been working. And Bill has honestly worked with the village for many years with Eric on a lot of day-to-day operations with data analyses and reporting that has gone on. So he's deeply familiar with a lot of the background and history with the village's initiatives on the beach program. What we're going to talk about today, we've got about 45 minutes here, I think, and we'll try to get to so we can have some time for some questions and discussion. But I'm going to give the first good chunk of this agenda here or outline. And we're going to say the very last one for Bill, which will take up the balance, a pretty large balance of the overall presentation. Um, I'll give an update on the Frying Pan Shoal bar site permitting, the importance of that. Just a quick comment about the Groinville conversion and the idea of something the village might want to think about in the future. South Beach, West Beach, marina maintenance, and the idea of a longer term beach management sustainability study. And I'll get into the importance of that. And also a report on the status of the UNCW capstone project that I am the mentor for the project, and the village has been kind enough to support that program, and it's for a project there on the island. So I'll go through all this real quickly. The Frying Pan Shoals Bar site permitting, we have reinitiated with following the completion of the beach project last year. We're pointing forward toward where are our future external sand sources should they be needed in the future, which under current situations they will be. And so, given that Jaybird Shoals is off the table for future sand borrowing, the most obvious location is going to be a location on Frying Pan Shoals, which is the bottom right circle, is an area where we're currently proposing for a Barra area to be permitted. So we've reinitiated conversations with the regulatory agencies over the last few weeks. We've had a new interagency meeting with both state and federal resource and regulatory agencies to give them an update on the village's activities. The last time there have been two prior conversations with the agencies. The last one was about 5 years ago. And now we're having to reinitiate that. So we brought them back up to speed of what the village is interested in doing with this portion of Frying Pan Shoals, and what the schedule is for that, because we believe it will take a long time to permit this for a site, particularly with some of the fisheries concerns expressed by the National Marine Fisheries Service and the Division of Fisheries there in North Carolina. And so we did not get a great response from the agencies, but we're continuing to work through some of those issues and developing a scope of work to respond to their concerns. But the idea now is to continue to push forward and with a permit application in the near future, and deal with some of their concerns as part of the regulatory process. So, Chris, I don't know if you have anything additional to add to that at this point in terms of the perspective from the village.
Yeah, Chris, good morning. Yeah, just to highlight two primary issues that are driving this effort. One is the monitoring and data expectations that BOEM wants the village to wait until the BOEM study's completed, which for us the timing is of the essence. That could take 5 years or so. So we can't sit back and wait on that study. And and then the other is the bar area physical recovery that, for an area that's not been tapped before as a sand resource, it's difficult to quantify what the recovery of the site how that would occur. But we're working with Chris and Bill to try to provide some data. They've done similar studies of other borrow sites at Cape Shoal locations in Florida, Cape Canaveral. So we're going to be working on that. And all of this is included in the executive summary that I shared with you all that gives the details on that scoping meeting. So,
Yeah, I just had one thing, just, for any new council members, the urgency of this is really high. Right now, the sand management plan, we depend on hitting another sand source every 6 years. And right now, the island has no sand source for 2030.
Yeah, 2030, 2031 would be the next.
Which means that a resolution of this is critical. So, Chris's group has been working on this for a long time, and I think that we've been setting up plans to be meeting with people in Washington and Raleigh to push this hard over this year. So.
Yeah, so this is a priority for our initiatives with the village. And Bill, when he gets to the sand management statements later in the presentation, the importance of this will be quickly realized from a financial perspective and need when we look at the options that are available to the village moving forward. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I had a couple, if you don't mind. We know Mother Nature doesn't always go on the timeline that we want. If we get to before 2030 and need sand, is Jaybird absolutely prohibited, or is it just frowned upon at this point?
You want me to start?
Go ahead, Chris. Yeah, please.
Yeah, so the last dredging of the Jaybird Shoal borrow site, as we understand, was the last time we could tap that because of the recovery.
Right.
There's no sand left of what was there.
Right.
Over the 3 times we dredged it. So that's the main driver of that.
Yeah, and even though there's still a portion of the shoal mass there, we still have a need to place beach compatible sand on the island. So that portion of that resource that is deemed beach compatible has also been severely depleted. So that's the focus on frying pan shoals, where we believe there's a massive amount. And the location of this, the benefit is twofold to the island. It's very close to the island, which would serve from the island from a cost perspective standpoint. The close proximity affects cost for the dredging. And then is the expected recovery of this bar site with sand transport off of both East Beach and South Beach out onto the shoal complex. We just have to drive this home more with the agencies to convince them that we can use this site with minimal impact, in probably just a short-term impact through the dredging process, but very quick recovery.
Sure. So you're kind of going down a different tack though than what I'm asking. I'm not challenging the need to find a new site. Clearly, I think we need to do that. It's more, what's the contingency plan prior to us getting that new site approved in this next 4. If something goes, God awful, we get hit by a hurricane and we need sand in the next 4 years, what are we thinking is our contingency right now?
So that question came up before, and what I understood was, in light of an emergency declaration, that certain regulatory processes could be expedited. And that would be, again, we would show that that's the only location of viable sand to remediate and recover from the storm.
Right. So we would be doing that at Jaybird or at
Frying Pan.
Frying Pan. We would say that's the only one that's around, and so
that's right.
And then you started to touch on the second one, when we've talked about sand placement before, I think if I'm not mistaken, the lion's share of the cost is in mobilizing the pipes and stuff, right? This would be shorter for the fillet that we typically, backfill, right? So what do we expect that to do from a cost standpoint? Because we know we've had inflationary costs go, I mean,
Yeah, you're still going to deal with inflationary costs, market cost increases just in general. And so the mobilization cost is really hard to put your finger on that. And you're right, it's a fixed cost no matter where your borrow site is. However, with a pipeline dredge here, the pipeline distances are about the same. You're going to have the same amount of the mobilization effort for pipeline will be similar. Approaching the shoal from the west to give you safe harbor nearby, which will reduce their risk also. And so, it, we want to be close, but we still can't control that mobilization cost. The only way we can influence the mobilization cost is limit the amount of equipment that's required to be mobilized to the job, and that's by keeping the borrow site close.
So I guess then the thing I would want us to consider as we move forward, and I know you and I have talked about this before, I think historically we've tried to keep the BRAT fund balance at like $1.5 million for, something unforeseen so that we can kind of do it. That's probably insufficient, or we probably need to start thinking about having a bigger fund balance there. I mean, just because costs are going to go up. So.
Chris, I had one more. A couple of weeks ago, we touched on this, the seeking a permit to be tapping frying pan shoals, one story, seeking a permit for tapping at one time and having, using that one time to do a lot of the research that agencies are complaining about. And
That's right. That's right. That's the kind of the strategy that we've proposed with Christian at Davy Group to give the agencies some, I guess, confidence that they're not just opening the barn door for unlimited use of the shoal, that we have a chance to use it once, collect a lot of data, and demonstrate through monitoring some of the predictions that we will make as part of the regulatory process. Again, we're having to make predictions now on how we think this borrow area will respond physically and biologically. And so some post-project monitoring would help demonstrate that and support a future regulatory action, which we believe, unless conditions can change with the sand management plan, will ultimately be required again. But yeah, it kind of minimizes the risk on the regulatory agency side to only allow a one-time event subject to future monitoring.
And that's the way you're pushing it right now.
That's correct.
Permitting. Okay, great.
Any other questions on this? We have a lot to cover and probably need to keep moving.
Just one very quick one, and that is that T-Bird Shoals is there's no chance given over time that that's going to get more sand and that then later becomes a useful site.
It's possible. We just don't know the time frame for that. I mean, it could be on the order of decades. It's not going to be. It probably would not be on the time frame of when your next need is required. So it's really there's not even really any monitoring going on. It's something that we could keep an eye on into the future. But we've not seen a lot of really rapid recovery from past dredging activities there. There's not a direct sand supply to it, or a close sand supply directly to it like there would be at frying pan shoals. Does that help?
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to move on to the next topic here, the idea of converting the sand tubes to rock. This is both a feasibility exercise as well as a regulatory exercise. So should it be something we want to pursue? I think the first step, we still have not taken action on this from a feasibility standpoint of looking at what the cost would be to convert the greenfield. So this could still be a priority in the coming year or two to look at that if this is something that, and from a feasibility side, and look at the cost and the potential cost benefits of doing that. The cost benefit would be reducing the need for future replacement of the tubes. But we could compare the cost of tube replacement to the initial capital cost of converting to rock. It would be quite expensive to convert these to rock if we were successful in the regulatory gaining the regulatory permissions. But this is something that's still on the agenda for us to study for the village. The idea is converting from a tube format of the structures to a hardened format. These are some structures on Longboat Key on the west coast of Florida. We completed for that community a couple of years ago.
Chris, that study is not to increase the size or quantity of groins. It's just as is.
Replace the materials they're made of.
And when you're looking at that, you're looking at it from an engineering cost perspective versus impact, nature, turtles, the whole environment.
We would have to look at it all because we would like to put some T heads on the seaward ends of them. These little, you can see those in the photograph here to the right. There can be turtle concerns with those, but from a performance standpoint, we like to add that feature to these structures to make sure the seaward end is stable. And it reduces your long-term maintenance of the structure.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Thanks. I thought that hardened structures were not permitted in North Carolina.
Well, that would be part of the conversation as part of the regulatory process.
And my second observation is I don't think this will meet with a lot of community approval on the island.
Jenny, this is Charles. That's a great point. Generally, there is a hardened structure ban in North Carolina. Our terminal groin and some other communities are an exception. A couple of years ago, we actually were successful in getting the General Assembly to pass a local act that allows Bald Head to have these. Chris and I were just trying to recall if the T heads are allowed. And also there's a federal issue of is it NOAA? Right, NOAA needs to sign off on the state regulation, and that's a DC and NOAA discussion. But essentially, the General Assembly has done everything it can to allow us to convert these. And the thought is that we would just try to have a more stable structure because these bags disintegrate and the beach starts to fail, whereas that would not happen with rocks, and they would not require replacement every few years when the fabric, even though it's several inches thick, disintegrates just because of sun and wave action.
Right. You're replacing these bags about every 5 years on average.
And I appreciate all that. And but I also thought, Charles, and believe me, I'm not sure about this, that the variance that the island got related to the Shoals Club location, but I didn't know that it was island wide. So it's been a while since I read it.
Absolutely. No, different things. The Coastal Resources Commission did give a variance for the sandbag revetments at the Shoals Club. This is particular to the law is written in such a way that it only applies to our existing growing field approved in 1995. So we've gotten good help from the state through the years, and that's been very, very important.
Going back to your question.
I think we need to be really clear, though, that while this falls into the category of we're researching all the options, I don't think at this point there's any decision push. I mean, we don't even know if this is the right option. Right. So I think we got to be clear about that, because the next thing we're going to hear is, people going crazy trying to say, don't put rocks on the beach.
We're just talking about the growing field. It's going to be there.
The growing field's not going away.
Right. And so it's just what you want it to be made of.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think going to you, I was about to address that same thing. It's like, this is, Jenny, what you were saying, it might economically make sense for our budget, and it might be a really bad idea. And so, so it's a whole lot more discussion before we ever get to the next.
And I would also assume that in order, given the cost that was just up there, in order to do that, there'd have to be some sort of bond issue to get that paid for.
That's right.
Which would require an island-wide vote. So I think that there's a lot of steps here. This isn't just three of us sit in a room today and say, oh yeah, okay, great, let's do it.
Yeah.
This is a long-term thing.
That's right. And the study at this point, I think, should be based principally on cost, and it gives you a decision-making point to understand, hey, what does maybe your most cost-effective thing long term is to keep replacing these tubes, so long as we can find the materials to replace them with. But in terms of a decision based on cost, it would be helpful to do the analysis to determine, hey, is there a benefit to converting these things to rock from a cost perspective? And then, and there's obviously a host of other concerns and issues associated with that. The General Assembly has only, made it allowable. It doesn't give us a permit to use them, and it obviously hasn't vetted the desires of the community at large on Bald Head Island. But um, for the body of decision makers, you would understand what the cost is moving forward and make a deliberate decision to say we understand what the cost is and the risk is of having to keep managing this with the tubes.
The last thing, Peter, I think that it might be worth having some understanding, if we can get it, of the cost of doing nothing. So what is the cost to the village, to the island, to taxpayers if the sand tubes go away and we don't replace them?
Yeah,
Because that cost is going to be significant.
Yeah, catastrophic failure of the shoreline.
Right. I mean, I just think that people need to understand this isn't a question of zero and everything stays the same, or 15 million and we get rocks, or 5 million a year or whatever and we get two.
It's which mitigation effort.
When we went through a lot to make sure the island, that whole corner of the island didn't wash away. And
right.
So I think we need to be really careful that people don't get the opinion that this is spend money to get something or don't do anything and we're fine. It's definitely not that. So it would be worth understanding, at least getting some big picture of what's the cost of doing nothing.
And Chris, in the past, y'all identified properties potentially at risk.
Right.
That's
And
right.
it was 250 million, maybe 15 years ago.
Yeah. So maybe we have that research. We just need to update the numbers. I know there's a lot of infrastructure that would be affected too: roads, sewers, water, all kinds of
Utilities.
the club.
Yeah,
There's a ton of stuff that would be affected. So if you just look at property values going down and all that, it would be catastrophic for the island to have that happen.
Right, and just a note. I mean, it might. We just finished the beach nourishment project last year, so the tubes at this point. I mean, the beach looks really great there right now. But immediately prior to the restoration, in any event, it's important to see what it looks like and what these tubes look like when those projects are about to occur. They're in pretty bad shape, and we're losing the ends of them. They're failing. And they're getting shorter all the time, and the beach really marches back very quickly on this area of the island. So they're an important feature, and the maintenance of them is critical to the sustainability of this region of the shoreline.
Chris, in terms of status, when we're talking about cost, what level of design are we at right now?
With the structures,
Yeah.
we have not started a study on that. This is a recommendation. If this is something that the village would like to do this year, we could have a decision document, or at least a statement document about cost and probable replacement type structures in the next few months that could be talked about through the coming
Okay.
year.
Okay, great.
It'd be something we would just need to be assigned that task to do.
Got it. Okay.
Right, but I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, so the next thing is just continue monitoring. Pretty fortunate on the east end of the island right now, the success of the last project, as well as some fortuitous shoal attachment activity just off the Cape there. So conditions are in pretty good shape at this point. Still, the idea of in the future, is this a sustainable condition, and would ultimately retreat be an issue? Right now, the Shoals Club has installed a pretty robust bag system. Hopefully that won't be tested anytime soon. But that is a line of defense that has been added to that area of the island. So for now, all's good. But things can change very quickly with the just the dynamics of the shoal itself, just offshore. A storm can change it overnight. So we'll continue to monitor that. The same on West Beach, we're continuing to monitor. There is an area of concern just to the left of the marina or just to the south of the marina. We continue to watch on that monitoring and looking at options as well. And I'll get to that when we get to the capstone comments in a few minutes. Just some of the history of that region of the shoal itself. It's pretty interesting. The material that's making it from South Beach around to West Beach and is attempting to migrate inland toward the marina. And some of it just hasn't made it to the area of most concerns, and this is where we're continuing to still monitor that. Obviously, once it gets to the marina, it could be a problem as we try to continue to maintain navigation conditions across the marina. So that would also be monitored as well. If we get a big slug of sand that continues to propagate inland on the West Beach shoreline, what is the ultimate fate of that? And how do we manage it once it starts approaching the marina itself? The beach management sustainability study, we talked about this last year. Again, this is another task that we've not been assigned yet, but it's something that we still believe the village should consider. Bill Hovensack's comments about the sand management plan will speak to a piece of this already, of really where is the program overall over the next 10, 20, 30, and 50 years with all the different issues that you're faced, including sea level rise, other activities with the channel deepening, should that ever, we've had some good news recently that it's been slowed down, but you're still affected by the channel. And how is the sand management plan going to affect you? The availability of sand from places like Frying Pan Shoals, and the ever-increasing cost of dredging. All that being folded in with the groins and all these management activities, how much does it cost to maintain what you have to desired conditions? For the most part, your conditions have been established and improved to a desired level. And really moving forward, the idea is that we need to maintain that. And so a sustainability study would really be a task of looking at all aspects of your overall program. What is the cost and frequency of each one of those activities involved? And what does that really look like from a long-term budgeting standpoint? On how much money will it take the community to continue to maintain and preserve the beaches that you've had and you've invested so much in over time? And so that's still a recommendation. We've done this for several other communities throughout the Southeast as a tool that can be used, particularly by staff and by the board to help make decisions as you move into the future and understand really what would be required from a budgeting standpoint. Any comments on that? Questions?
When you're doing a study like that, is this a study, well, we can do this in a week, or is a study like this is 5 years?
Oh, no. I mean, this would be a study that we would do with existing information. This could be a 6 to 8 month, with all of the other stuff we have going on. It's something that could definitely be done within a year.
Okay. And you haven't given us a price tag on trying to do that study yet?
No, we've not been asked directly to do this yet. We've made this recommendation last year as well. Obviously, we've just had other priorities in the past year. Right. And so this is still out there. So like the Groinfield conversion, this could all be bundled together, right? We could look at it all as part of an overall program in terms of and do it all in one study. If there's something that the council would like to pursue, and we could work with Chris and sketch it out a scope of work for that.
Chris, we've been talking to Ward Smith and the Ferguson Group about the Corps of Engineers doing a feasibility study. Where is the overlap, and is one redundant to the other?
Not really. The Corps, this would be really the village's management roadmap, and that could include should you be successful if you choose to go down that path, and should you be successful in becoming eligible for any form of federal funding under a shore protection program. The Corps' planning documents are focused on the Corps' responsibility. They will outline what your financial contribution needs to be to that. but it might not include all the different aspects that are talked about here. That the village would still be on the hook to for some amount of funding for that program into the future. So we have done these types of studies for communities that also have federal projects. So there would be overlap, but we would just include in here, cost benefits of the federal participation as a line item in here. The federal feasibility study is a whole different animal.
Okay, good. Somehow we skipped over the Wilmington Port deepening project. Or did I just not hear that?
Right. I did not touch on the Wilmington deepening project. Christy, you want to make yeah. Do you want to make some comments on that? We do have some later in the presentation, but not directly related to the status of where that stands.
Okay,
Yeah, I think we'll touch upon that more with our federal lobbyist
okay,
and legal
Okay,
in
good,
closed session
good.
tomorrow.
okay.
One last slide for me, then I'm going to turn it over to Bill. Gosh, and it's way too much time already. But like I said, we're sponsoring a capstone project. This is focused on an activity the village has pursued twice in the past. We have 4 students in the senior class there at UNC Wilmington in our coastal engineering program. I developed a scope of work for them. The idea is a beneficial use of sand that has accreted in the Bald Head Creek Shoal area, just north of the marina and north of Rowboat Row, and looking at strategies for removing this material and transporting it to beneficial use areas. All of these, this is a very academic study, so don't be alarmed by the fact that we're proposing to put sand on the island back in the Jaybird Shoals Barra area. But it is an option that they wanted to study. But we're looking at, hey, what is the quantity of material that is in the shoal, the spit feature, and what is the capacity on Rowboat Row, West Beach, and South Beach, as well as Jaybird Shoals for this material to be moved to. It's something we've done several times in the past, but it does have all the features of an engineering exercise that is the students have been very excited about that. They've spent a day in the field doing a survey of the spit itself. Chris facilitated that and spent some time with them. And it's a good group of young men who are doing this, and I've really enjoyed that. So we'll get something out of it that could be useful that we could leverage for future planning should the village decide to for a future shoal management event here of moving material back to Rowboat Row, West Beach, or even some of the South Beach area.
And on the scale of a 1 million cubic yard project like we just did, historically, we've placed by dredging the creek mouth, 40, 50, 60,000 cubic yards. So it's a very small scale wise process and program.
That's right. It's an order of magnitude smaller than what you typically do.
One thing we might want to consider, I know the Conservancy's done a fair amount of research and stuff on monitoring the health of the creek and getting their opinion about how this would affect the health of the creek would be great.
So historically, when we've dredged the creek mouth, it's been under the auspices of water quality, not so much as beneficial use sand, but that's how we have got that.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, Bill, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I will turn my camera off to not be a distraction, but I'm here to advance your slides.
Bill, we actually have till 10. So it was actually 9 to 10. So you have more time.
Try to go quickly because this might present a lot of.
I'm not sharing my screen. Did someone take my screen away from me?
Took it away from you, Chris.
Okay, good. Less responsibility is better.
I'm going to give him a clicker.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. And I'm going to need to advance quite a bit. All that. There we go. Thank you so much.
And let me share the screen for our audience and we won't be good.
Does it have a little laser pointer too?
Yeah, I think it's.
Oh, there we go. Okay. So what I was going to talk about is the sand management plan, the Wilmington Harbor Sand Management Plan, which is sort of the governing document for the disposal or the placement of maintenance disposal material from the channel. And it came into effect it was formulated in 2000 and implemented following the project in, what's our slide?
Hold on.
It was there we go. So it was formulated in 2000, following the channel deepening in 2000, 2001. And the purpose of it was for the placement of beach quality material to go back from whence it came, right, from the various islands. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of that, the comparison of the disposal cycles to date that have actually been constructed versus what was theoretically written in the sand management plan. Description of the Bald Head Island and Oak Island reaches and a history of the placement activity along both islands, both from the core perspective and also what has been paid for privately or by the village. And then history of the volume changes as measured through monitoring surveys and monitoring reports. And then potential adjustments to the sand management plan. How do I advance? Oh, there we go. Doesn't seem to be advancing.
I'm sorry.
Oh, if you could just advance.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can go to the next one. So just an overview, here is the channel. It was deepened by about 4 feet in 2000, 2001 and realigned. And that's what prompted the need for the sand management plan. You can see how close it cuts to Bald Head Island, which is many of the causes of the erosion on that end of the island. If you could advance to the next slide, please. So going to the sand management plan, as I said, it was formulated, written in 2000, and it described the placement of material from the channel maintenance and where it would go along the 2 islands of Oak Island and Bald Head Island. It's very vague in the language, and it can be interpreted. It doesn't call out specific stationing from this station to this station should receive this should receive this. It's very vague. This is basically the map that it shows, and it describes the placement along Bald Head Island and then Oak Island. And if you can advance to the next slide, the language in it basically said that for every 3 cubic yards of sand, 2 would go to Bald Head Island, 1 would go to Oak Island. Okay. And the way they implemented that was in a 6-year disposal cycle. Every 2 years, you would have a disposal. The first 2 would go to Bald Head Island. The third would go to Oak Island, okay, to get to that 2/3 ratio. And the placement areas, now they did say that the disposal locations should be based on the monitoring results on each island. But in general, the material will be placed primarily along South Beach and West Beach on Bald Head Island. And on East Oak Island, Caswell Beach, beginning at the point just east of the Power and Light Company Cooling Water Discharge Canal. If you go back 1 slide, that's that red star at the top at station 140. Now you can see the area that they described as East Oak Island, Caswell Beach as a placement area. Quite a bit of that is to the west of that star, but it said primarily in general, a lot of wiggle language in there, which has been sort of a cause of controversy since the beginning. You advance to the next 2 slides. So how did they come up with this 2-to-1 ratio? It referred back to this 1999 ERDIC report, where they had some sediment transport analyses. I looked at the report. I cannot figure out where they get the 2-to-1 ratio. Okay. It is never explicitly concluded in that report. The numbers that are in the report don't really lend itself to the 2-to-1 ratio. In fact, when I was reading it, I asked another person in the office, his opinion on it. And he's like, oh, well, we wrote a little white paper on this, kind of picking it apart. And what they found in that paper was that the patterns of sediment transport don't match what they're seeing in the monitoring data from the Corps at that time. The input data and analytical methods used were substandard, did not include riverine hydraulics, effect on wave climate. It was just a substandard study that actually didn't lead to the conclusions that were reached in the sand management plan. Both Olson, we did some modeling as part of the terminal groin project, Delta 3D modeling, and found a 4.2-to-1 ratio was more appropriate. And we were finding about 323,000 cubic yards of erosion to the nodal point, and I'll talk about that in a second, off of Bald Head Island versus 78,000 cubic yards per year off of Oak Island. Divide that, you get a ratio of 4.2 to 1. With the understanding that that model was more geared towards Bald Head Island, it was a little rougher around Oak Island. So that Oak Island number may be a little less certain than what we were finding on Bald Head Island. Next slide, please.
For your input on Oak
Yeah.
Island, were you using the entire span of the island, or were you only using that part that was east of the seeping now cooling?
Now I'm not sure how they determined that in that verdict report of that location.
Okay.
But in the modeling that we did, that was about the nodal point, was about that general area. So that volume that was lost was from that nodal point.
So just the end of the island, not considering the entire.
Not considering the entire island.
Okay.
And same for Bald Head Island too. It was going to the nodal point, which I'll talk about, which is about 1/3 of the way west from the terminal point. I'll show you. I have a graphic of depicting that tab. But I don't want to focus too much on the Bald Head nodal point.
Sure.
Because that's not mentioned in the sand management.
Yeah.
Specifically.
Agreed.
Yeah. So talk real quickly about what's been built to date versus what was detailed in the sand management plan. Theoretically, sand management plan called for 6-year disposal cycles. Every 2 years, have a disposal project. So far, or in theoretically, there should have been, as of now, 4 completed cycles with 8 distinct disposal projects along Bald Head Island with a total of 8.7 million cubic yards placed. That's theoretical. In actuality, they've been spaced out a little further, 8 to 9 years on average. 3 completed cycles, so we're missing a cycle, which results in 2 fewer disposals. Granted, the disposals were larger than what was called for in the sand management plan, but you're still a net deficit of about 600,000 cubic yards, a little more than that, 25,000 cubic yards over that 25 years. That also affects Oak Island. Theirs were a little less too. All total, over 1 million cubic yards less sand placed than what was described in the sand management plan. Next slide, please. This kind of graphically shows what I'm talking about. These are all the disposal events, Oak Island and Bald Head Island, with the background erosion rates that were in the sand management plan. Because even in the sand management plan as detailed, it was not meeting the need of either island from the sand management plan, certainly Bald Head Island from what we've seen. And so the black line is what was supposed to be constructed. And you can see there are many more black diamonds than the blue circles, which was what was actually constructed. And you can see the big gaps in events. The blue circles are the Bald Head events. You can see the big gap in the temporal events. And when you get right down to it, at some points, like Oak Island, they were receiving sand for 8 years from a disposal project, between projects. Bald Head Island is up to 4.5, 5 years between disposal projects, which you have mitigated with village-sponsored. Next slide, please.
I'm sorry, on the blue dot, that's including the private placement as well, though.
No. These are just the disposal projects. And I'll get to the private placement in a minute.
Okay.
So, yeah, those. We can talk about that.
Well, then that shows 9 disposals. Didn't you say we've only had 6?
That maybe I'll have to look at that. But yeah, it should be 6.
Yeah.
Oh, that may be including the Oak Island as well. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. Next slide.
Yeah, we got 6.
Yeah, you have 6.
We got 6, and then the others come from the
Yeah.
other side,
Yeah,
which is 3.
3. So that's 9. This is a map of Bald Head Island or photo of Bald Head Island. The nodal point that I was talking about in that Delft 3D modeling is at about station 118, where from that point to the west was 323,000 cubic yards modeled. You'll see a slide later, not to spoil it, but when I did the model, or when I crunched the monitoring data, I got about minus 326 cubic yards per year. So it was very close to what was modeled.
Right.
West Beach, Bald Head Island. Again, not to talk about it too much, but the monitoring data set that we have for Bald Head is incredible. 2 monitoring servers a year, comprehensive data, nice spacing. We have a good data set. Next slide, please. This graphic shows all of the beach fill projects built along Bald Head Island since 2001. The blue are disposal projects. The red are village-sponsored projects. Primarily, the big red ones are the 2010, the 2018, 2019, and the recently constructed 2024-25 project. All total, all projects, 14.1 million cubic yards, spelled total, have been placed along Bald Head Island. 12.3 million cubic yards since that initial project, which was about 1.8 million cubic yards. Of that total, 8.1 million cubic yards have been these maintenance disposal projects, and 4.2 million from the village at a total cost of about $42.8 million spent by the village, not adjusted for inflation. That's cost at the time. Next slide, please. So if you look at the monitoring data and you take out all of those projects, you get a linear fit of about a loss of 402,200 cubic yards per year from the island. That's a big number. And if you look at the linearity of that graph, it's like a clock. It's just very consistent loss. If you look on the shaded areas are when we had various projects at the time. So you can see the number of projects, but yeah, 402,000, keep that number in mind, 402,000 cubic yards per year. Next slide, please. Since the terminal groin, it's gone down a little bit, 397,000 cubic yards per year. But the terminal groin to that nodal point you're talking about, the long-term average, 280,000. Pre-terminal groin, about 326,000 cubic yards, as I mentioned, very close to the Duff modeling. Since then, about 47,000 cubic yards per year. Next slide, please. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about Oak Island, which is a little bit more of a mystery. These are the reaches of monitoring. You have Fort Caswell, then you have the Caswell Beach east and west, divided along the discharge canal, which is mentioned in the sand management plan. Then you have the town of Oak Island East, which is also included in that graphic in the sand management plan as a potential placement area, and is within the area that the Corps has been placing as part of their disposal projects. Next slide, please. This shows what has been placed since 2001, including the initial, the light green is the initial project, and then the yellow is 2009 and 2018. I don't have the exact data yet on the recently completed, but at some point when I get that, I'll update those numbers. You can advance to the next slide. In summary on that, East Caswell Beach, that's an area west or east of the nodal point, they've placed about 500,000 cubic yards through the two maintenance disposals. These are just the maintenance. For West Caswell Beach, about 0.7 million cubic yards. Oak Island, about 1.2 million cubic yards. All of that, except for about 81,000 cubic yards along East Oak Island Beach, have been part of the disposal project. No sand behind the maintenance disposal has been placed along Caswell Beach. And assuming a 1.3 million cubic yard fill for this recently completed disposal, long-term average is about 2.2 to 1 sand sharing ratio. It's a little higher than 2 to 1, but very close. But I want to get back to no sand beyond the maintenance disposal have been placed along Caswell Beach. So the current plan is more than needing Caswell Beach's need. Meanwhile, Bald Head Island has placed about 4.2 million cubic yards along your beaches during that time as part of the response. Next slide, please. So to assess the Oak Island sand losses, I dug into the monitoring reports that are publicly available. I don't have access to the core data, profile data, so I had to go based off published reports. Various sources. We have 4 main sources, the core. You have our monitoring that we did following the One Jaybird Shoals project, the 2018-19 project, that then was taken over by Moffett and Nickel when they had their project in 2021 and 2025. And they also did they had access to the town's data and some core data, and they did some other analyses from 2003 to 2019. And then you have Coastal Protection Engineering, which is the firm that Caswell Beach hires to review the data. The problem with comparison here, each uses slightly different reaches, slightly different methods, slightly different depths of closure, which is the distance offshore where you cut off the survey when you're looking for volume, which comes into play here because you have these shoal features that move and can greatly influence your numbers. And I'll show you that in one sec. Next slide, please. So boiled all down, I look at all the data. it's all over the place as far as the changes in these various reaches. The light green are the core for that 2000 to 2013 data set. Then you have the Moffett and Nickel in yellow. Fort Olson, we only were charged with monitoring Caswell Beach East and Port Caswell. But the one I want to point out is the Moffett and Nickel and Cyan and the CP&E. If you look at these numbers, those are using the exact same surveys, the exact same period, and they get wildly different results. And the reasoning for that is they use different depths of closure. The CP&E, they cut it off a little shorter, which is probably appropriate. Moffett and Nickel, they went a little further, picked up some of that shoal feature. And so that greatly influences the numbers. Long story short, it's not as easy to boil down to a single number that you can then calculate a sand ratio. Bald Head, we're pretty confident with our number. Oak Island, it's tough to come up with that number to calculate an exact sand ratio. Next slide, please. Well, what I can tell you is that 2 to 1 is not the correct number. Okay. Nowhere when you slice it anyway, you come close to 2 to 1 on the monitoring data. So if we're going to modify the plan, it needs to be updated to 2 to 1. That is critical. Also, the long gaps between projects needs to be significantly reduced. And I'll talk about how we can do that on the slide. Next slide, please. All right, so I looked at a 4 to 1 ratio, which was supported by the modeling that Del 3D did. Very conservative, in my opinion, but something that we can certainly justify. Then I looked at a 6 to 1 ratio, which if you look at the one of the data sets, that long core 2003 to 2013 data set, if you compare that to our long-term loss rate, you get about a 6 to 1 ratio. The other nice part about a 6 to 1 ratio is it pretty much mitigates, assuming the disposal projects moving forward are like what they were for the past 25 years, which is a big assumption, pretty much alleviates the erosion loss. It would mitigate for it, the erosion loss during that time. That makes sense. Then we would eliminate the temporal gaps by placing sand on each island, each disposal event. Theoretically, that would be every 2 years in the 6-year disposal plan. In actuality, it's 2.5 to 3 years. So every 2.5 to 3 years, sand would be going to both Bald Head Island and Oak Island. But there is a cost to that because there would be a secondary mobilization of pipeline. But the Corps did a reevaluation report in 2011. I will speed up here. It found that would be less than 2% over the 6-year disposal cycle. Next slide, please. Go ahead and go to the next slide. We'll go to the escalated costs. So every year, or every project that Bald Head has been building recently, like the last one, 1 million cubic yards, there's a cost associated, right? If I looked at 3 alternatives. Alternative 1 is that nothing changes to the sand ratio. Now, again, these are very preliminary results. Still need to talk with Chris and village staff and go over these numbers, but I just want to present them to kind of give you a comparison. So think of these more of a comparison than an absolute cost. Looking at a 30-year forecast of costs and escalating those values using the Army Corps has an index of cost indices. They have a beach restoration number projecting that forward 30 years. Alternative 1 that we looked at was same 2 to 1 sand ratio. Village builds a project, 1 million cubic yard project every 6 years. And in that 6th year, you also replace the geotube field. Project that over 30 years. That's 5 more nourishment projects. And you can see the total cost there in today dollars, and then annualized using a discount rate of 6%, an annualized rate. If you modify it to 4 to 1, again, doesn't alleviate your need for village projects. Now, again, since you've been building these projects, these 1 million cubic yard projects, over a 6-year disposal cycle, you've been placing additional sand to what has been lost to the tune of about 500,000 cubic yards every 6 years. So the total sand in the system since construction of the original harbor deepening, you have about 2.4 million cubic yards in your system then movable. Okay, so to actually alleviate the need, you would need about 500,000 cubic yards less. Well, to compare apples to apples, I'm projecting forward with the same size projects that you've been using, minus the delta if you get the difference in the sand ratio. Does that make sense? I know I just. So alternative 2 was you modify it to a 4:1 sand ratio. A 4:1 ratio adds about 300,000 cubic yards per 6-year cycle along Bald Head Island. So that reduces that million cubic yard project to 700,000 cubic yard project. Project that forward, you see that. Then you modify it to a 6:1 ratio, which again mitigates for the actual loss that you're experiencing, but you're still doing a village project as needed. Again, this does not include if you have a storm impact, does not include if there's changes to funding or maintenance disposal patterns or that. This is just if you project it using what has been done. And you can see that cost there. And a 6:1 ratio adds about 460,000 cubic yards per 6-year cycle. Next slide. And I just want to show you, here's sort of the escalation of the cost for these 3 projects. You can see the blue. Again, you have your village project, boom, 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 boom. It goes up with inflation here. And then you have the various projects, the green and the blue are the 4:1 and the 6:1 ratio with the disposal cycles in between. And that is the only cost you pay for that would be the delta. This is assuming Bald Head Island pays the delta in having that additional mobilization every disposal, which is minimal compared to the overall project costs. That's what I have on the sand management plan. And I stopped with 2 minutes left, so I'm going to open it up to questions.
So when you're looking at this, are you using the nodal point or are you going all the way down the beach?
So for Bald Head Island, it's all the beach, which, because there's no nodal point mentioned in the sand management. Yeah. And if you go nodal point to nodal point, again, it gets tricky because you have to pick, time periods and whatnot. So no, this is all the beach. And for Oak Island, if you use the full data set that includes that East Caswell Beach, that includes, or East Oak Island, I'm sorry. That was East Oak Island and all of Caswell Beach gets you to 6:1. If you go nodal to nodal, that number goes up.
Okay, so
yeah, the ratio.
You just lost me there for a second. So when you're on Oak Island, you're going to the nodal point. But when you're on Bald Head, you're not.
No.
Going east and west. Caswell.
No, I apologize. Oak Island, no, it includes East Oak Island as well.
Okay.
It includes the full area that's shown in that same.
Got it. So it goes past that.
It does go past that.
Okay.
If you were to go nodal to nodal, that number, that sand ratio does go up.
Got it.
Any other questions?
Yes. There was mention by the Corps of taking the sand from the reach immediately off of Caswell Beach, putting that sand back on Caswell Beach.
Yeah.
Taking Bald Head reaches 1 and 2, putting that sand back on Bald Head. I know Eric's view on that.
Yeah, and I have a similar view on that. They looked at that in that reevaluation report in 2011, and number one, that material that they're talking about Bald Head is finer, right, than what would be for Oak Island. And also, it's a washing machine there. You can't say for certain all that sand in that beach is coming off the beach from Oak Island. That is not a way to do it because you can't determine that exact reach, that sand is coming from Oak Island. A better way is based off the monitoring. Where is the sand leaving? Where does the sand need replaced? And to reevaluate that using monitoring surveys and monitoring data.
So not a good idea.
That would not be a good idea. Certainly not a good idea for Bald Head. And I don't think from an engineering and scientific perspective, you can necessarily justify that particular reach goes here because that sand is coming from here. Not really. No. Thank you.
Yeah, earlier conversations you and I and Chris have had, the sand, the amount of sand that both beaches were losing, that number versus the amount of sand that's being dredged.
Yeah.
That was pretty close to being a wash. Am I misremembering that?
Um,
In terms of when the amount of sand that Castle Oak
Yeah.
Island was losing and the amount of sand that Bald Head Island was losing, and compared to that, the amount of sand that was actually being dredged. That
Yeah, and
it got to
actually-
a point where that number was pretty close to being.
and you're right on that, particularly if you look at, again, and compare, it depends on what you're looking at from Oak Island's perspective. But if you go on that one long data set that the Corps had for 10 years, and you go to that 6-to-1 ratio, it pretty much balances out both islands within 5 to 10,000 cubic yards per year. So yes, yeah.
So when we're looking at, and if we're, I don't know how you'd be rigid about it, but if you were rigid about it, just looking at the littoral cell, we should have enough sand on the dredging to take care of both islands.
I agree with that. There may be some, when you have storm impacts and whatnot, that goes out the window. But in a perfect ideal situation, yes, it's a pretty close balance. Like I said, 6-to-1 gets you pretty close to that based off the historic data.
Yeah.
Hey, Bill, this is Chris. I just want to add, I think the point draws back to what you made in your presentation, is that the historical placement values on the island have exceeded the need. And so on both islands.
Oh yeah, including the village
right.
sponsor projects on Bald Head Island. Actually, if you go, can you go to the next slide? I have one last slide. Yeah.
But historically, that's been required to establish baseline conditions. But if we're going to purely look at, the balance of material being lost from respective islands and the amount of that's available in the channel and the maintenance events, it does closely balance. But if the village is trying to keep up with the rate that they placed historically, they will continue to need those external sources. Kind of back to Bill's numbers there. And Bill, am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, you are. And if you look at this, anybody's read our monitoring reports. This is a figure that you'll see in most of them. The sawtooth of where you have episodic placement of sand, and then this is the initial project in 2001, and then it draws back, and then you have the disposal. But as you can see, this line is trending up because we're adding sand to the system every time, in addition to what is being lost. And so you can see, like I said before, we have about an extra 2.3, 2.4 million cubic yards in the system than after the initial project. And so what Chris is getting at is, you have to decide, do we want to continue adding additional sand to the system, or are we going to be in a maintenance mode and try to maintain the status quo? If you maintain the status quo, you cut those projects down by 500,000 cubic yards, significant dollars. If you go to a 6-to-1 ratio, you reduce it almost to zero, with the anticipation that if you have storm impacts, you still need to have an external source for projects.
That's right, Bill. That's right. Yeah. It's a more of a maintenance approach to things, and you do get that number down to almost zero theoretically. But you should still, you're always going to have to be prepared for, the idea of bringing sand from another source. But yeah, that's how the math works.
Yeah. And if you look back at photos from, 2000, 2001, I mean, you all know, it was beat up. Now it's nice. We're a year and a half past the project. But even in 3 or 4 years, when it's time for another project or another disposal, it'll be a significantly better situation than it was prior to that initial project.
Just one thing that, I've been looking at this for a long time now, and, we've had these discussions. When we talk about 6-to-1, it's to make sure that you understand, it's not like, okay, we're going to get sand for the next 6 things, and then Castle Beach gets sand, and then they got to wait 7 years before they get sand again. I think that what prompted a lot of these studies was a conversation with the mayor of Castle Beach, who can't make it 4 years. They're when they get sand, they get too much sand, and then you wait 4 years, and they're dead. And the idea that we're pumping, $18 million in every 6 years is also ludicrous. And so all the 6-1 might be a situation that we're both getting sand every time.
Right, yeah.
And it's just that ratio of how much sand we're getting each time.
Yeah, Caswell gets the benefit of having it, they don't have that long delay. And the Corps' reevaluation report acknowledged that this long delay is a problem.
Right.
And they tried to, they talked about that plan that Charles was talking about with pulling from the particular reaches to go to the shore on an every 2-year cycle. Well, they got half of it right, in my opinion. The every 2-year cycle would be improving because, particularly for Caswell Beach, I mean, that last little bit, there's a lot of unraveling going on at the very end before they get that injection of sand that hopefully with an every 2-year injection wouldn't be a problem. Yes, Chris.
The big picture, if we were dredging, if the Corps was doing maintenance dredging every 2 years, and historically there's been 1 million to 1.2 million cubic yards. If we got 750,000 cubic yards, the other side got 250 ballparking, that could maintain both sides moving forward.
Yeah, and I think it's closer to, and I'd have to check my numbers again, but closer to like a 900,000 to 175,000 split.
Got it.
Based on the historic patterns of both loss and the disposal projects that they've been doing with the time spacing that they've had and with the volumes that they've had, which is no guarantee. As it lays out in the sand management plan and the reevaluation report, this isn't a promise. It's not a contract. It's aspirational.
Well, it also requires congressional appropriation for the Wilmington district to be able to fund it to do it.
Right.
And those have been years where it wasn't 2 years and went to 3 because one, federal funding wasn't there to cover it all. Or in the last case, what we believe is just they didn't get it out on the street, the bid in time to get competitive bids.
Which is why going to that 2-year cycle or 3-year cycle, depending on what it is beneficial too, because if there is a delay, well, you receive sand that much sooner in the past. You're not waiting as long.
Bill, have you done any research at all about how quickly the sand erodes off the beach, given the sand coming from the channel versus the sand coming from Jaybird Shoals? Because my understanding is the sand coming from the channel is finer and lighter.
Yeah.
Blows up into the dunes, it washes away faster. The assumption here is that sand is sand, but I don't necessarily think that's true.
No, and it's not. I will say the one difficult part about Bald Head Island is you have sand injection so often that it's tough.
You can't.
You're in the process of equilibration, and then you inject more sand, right, and to keep it. But yes, I would agree with that. That the channel sand is certainly finer, and that would erode quicker.
Is the sand that's in the dunes, that's built up in the dunes, is that even a material factor in these calculations in terms of volume?
No.
Okay.
No, we are.
I assume that. Yeah. Okay.
Anything else? Sorry, I went a little long.
Yeah, maybe just intent. So, I mean, we've been doing, these studies, I don't know when we started like a couple of months ago, wasn't it? Maybe a little bit more. Is that the intention is to be putting together a sand management plan that we going to the Corps and, trying to make a case as to this is how it should change. Corps right now, the last meeting we had with the Corps, they talked, hey, we have to redo the sand management plan. How long it takes them to get their act together to do that versus how long it takes us. At least our approach so far has been, we're not going to wait for them. We're going to get in front of them and present something. And I think the other side of that, in addition to that, we're going to Washington in another month and to be looking at the Corps on the national level and appropriations. What some of these implications are for having sand brought in every single session. What does that mean in terms of cost to us? Because obviously there's more. You're setting up on both sides of the channel. So there's some added costs there.
And the other part is the buy-in and support on the other side. And the mayors, we've been meeting with them on this. We just haven't met with them since this.
No, not since we put so much together.
Right.
Good. Hey, thanks so much.
Are they at least amenable to the idea of a 6-to-1, just to up the frequency?
So I think the stickling point is going to be the makeup of Oak Island. And so the Caswell Beach end is like, oh, how great. We'd be getting sand as much and as often as we need it. And then you get beyond the nodal point or get too much further. And the sand right now that Oak Island gets, and those our projections, like, well, they're not feeding sand back into the channel, but we're taking sand out of the channel and it's going further down the beach.
Right.
So in terms of your question, Castle Beach, I think it would be very amenable and has been talking to us. I think if you get down to a faction of the Oak Island away from Castle Beach, somebody's gonna get pissed off. And so, because all of a sudden they're looking at, well, we're not getting the sand. The sand was there. I was like,
Yeah.
well, you're taking sand out of the system when we're putting it further down on Oak Island.
Yeah.
That's gotta be part of the argument.
Got it.
Okay, great. Thanks so much.